Hello, I'm J.R. Larson, writer, producer, and director with Dreamshot Films. Thank you for joining us on this first of a series of webcasts and webinars we call In Our Lifetime. Some of you may already be familiar with our topic and have heard of our project. In 2019, when mass shootings occurred in both Dayton, Ohio, and in El Paso, Texas, within just a couple of days of one another, something changed. I knew I could no longer sit on the sidelines. I filmed a video that led to the writing of two screenplays, one short and the other feature length, both proposing a set of radical ideas that may be a path out of the violent crime spiral we've been experiencing these last several years. The In Our Lifetime project is a community conversation. Our objective is to get people to talk together about the violent crime problem in our country and consider bold solutions. How can we flatten the curve on violent crime and eventually bring the pandemic to an end? Today's broadcast is a teleplay. In upcoming installments, we will host virtual coffee houses and live town hall coffeehouse webinars where citizens of all ages, social and economic statuses, different backgrounds and beliefs can weigh in and contribute to the evolution of our ideas and proposals for change. We will bring our cameras into local Virginia coffee houses, like the places where our forefathers debated revolutionary ideas of how to gain back control of their freedom and destinies. These will be conversations powered by citizens deeply interested in the happiness, health, and safety of all the people of their communities and our nation. Tonight's story is called The Coffeehouse.
Outside the Backstreet Brews Coffee House. The year is 2023. It's a late afternoon. Meet Mason Alexander, age 41, a successful entrepreneur. He sees himself as an ordinary man. Others see him as a man doing extraordinary things. Some view him as dangerous to the status quo. He's a moral man with an all-consuming desire to make a positive difference in his community. He is committed to promoting freedom of speech and exchange of ideas, no matter how radical. He owns and is chief barista at Backstreet Brews, a trendy in some ways, yet traditional coffee house in Lovettsville, Virginia. Later today, Backstreet Brews will host a guest lecturer. Under Mason Alexander's arm, he carries his latest love, a piece of painted art. A scene of characters from R. Charlton's Williamsburg, Virginia coffee house circa 1775. R. Charlton's Coffee House and its patrons helped define what once it meant to be deeply interested in politics and governance, to be moral and philosophical, and to be concerned with the commonweal. The coffee house was a place to be thoughtful and human, publicly wrestling with notions of power and belief without any certainty of finding ironclad conclusions. It was a good place to prepare for the complexities of history and of life itself. Outside Backstreet Brews Coffee House late afternoon. Mason Alexander enters Backstreet Brews, immediately taken, as he frequently is, by the contrast between the world outside versus the one inside its doors. He marvels how the purpose of the coffee house from 300 years ago thrives just as well in the 21st century. The coffee house was a place to consider the roles of refreshment, debate, and ideas on the cusp of revolution. The coffee house is a place for imbibing words as much as coffee. Mason Alexander steers right and sets the painting down on the counter. He dons his apron and begins work at the espresso machine.
How did it go?
The estate guy and I came to an agreement. We grant him a bottomless coffee cup and we can keep the painting for free.
Mason Alexander shows his wife Erica Alexander their latest painting, Patrick Henry at R. Carlton's Williamsburg Coffee House. Inside, R. Carlton's Coffee House circa 1775. Late afternoon. The scene from the painting momentarily comes to life with the movements and the sounds of a room full of colonial coffee enthusiasts. Inside Backstreet Brews Coffee House. Late afternoon. Mason Alexander hangs the painting alongside gallery paintings of George Mason, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and other colonial Virginia leaders.
I love it. Painted art is timeless. There's nothing else like it. I look at a painting, and it takes me there. Wherever there is.
Mason Alexander has had a good day. Tonight's Coffeehouse guest lecturer will be George Mason University professor Tobias Federer. Tonight, Mason Alexander gets to share their newest piece of timeless art with his fellow citizens and Backstreet Brews patrons. As Erica Alexander continues to gaze into the painting, Mason Alexander's eyes pan the coffeehouse. He sees other similar paintings on the walls around. There is a continuous flow of movement throughout the coffeehouse. Two students are sitting, conversing with their books out at one table. Eddie Stansfield, a student of theology, and Frida McCoy, a physics major, await the arrival of their study partner Darren Stevens. Today they work together for their next political science team assignment. Today's Coffeehouse guest lecturer promises to stimulate their imagination and conversations.
Professor Federer's lecture on Monday really got me thinking.
Oh yeah, he's kind of a radical. Or, well, some of the ideas he puts out there would be considered pretty controversial.
We have great seats for tonight's Coffeehouse lecture.
Joshua Jennings, a young man in his 30s, sits at a table for two reading a book. He has two cups in front of him. He is a man of peace and the cloth, soon to meet up with his equally activist sibling. Matthew Lowry, in military uniform, enters Backstreet Brews and stands near the front door. Inside are Carlton's Coffeehouse. Circa 1775, late afternoon. A military man heads over to the order counter. Almost immediately the door opens again and he recognizes his appointment. Inside Backstreet Brews Coffeehouse late afternoon. Jerry Dunphy, a news reporter, appears relieved to see Matthew. They exchange man hugs, then approach the order line together. The latter deferential to the other, as an AA sponsee often is.
It's good to see you, Jerry. Are you doing okay today?
I'm managing, one day at a time. It's not easy.
You picked the right bar to hang out at tonight. What are you going to get? First round's on me.
Dennis and Maria Maldonado enter the coffeehouse together, standing aside and chatting before stepping onto the order line. Both eager to imbibe of the coffee and conversation teed up for this evening. Dennis enforces the laws while Marita litigates them. A marriage made in legal heaven. His police officer uniform gives his vocation away, not so much hers.
It smells good in here. Officer, what are you going to have?
There's an abrupt eruption of laughter from the students' table.
Counselor, I'll have what she's having.
Less playfully, Maria Maldonado asks,
Did they call you to the active shooter scene at Dulles Town Center?
Yeah, another anger and gun-fueled show. We arrested him. Nobody died. This time.
Mason Alexander feels a buzz of excitement. Tonight again, Backstreet Brews delivers on its purpose and the legacy of its Virginia Coffeehouse predecessors. The patrons' conversations peak higher and higher. Laughter, the clanking of cups, and pounding of fists on tables can be heard. Backstreet Brews' enjoyable atmosphere is about to change. Enter Deputy District Attorney Robert Campbell. Robert Campbell represents the establishment, maintaining the status quo. He walks to the front of what is now an empty line. Mason Alexander and Robert Campbell aren't friends. By definition, they are at best competitors, frenemies.
Mr. District Attorney. Robert, are you here for just a cup of coffee?
Deputy District Attorney, and you know that. I'm here like everyone else. For the coffee, conversation, debate, enlightenment. Do you offer any of the above?
You came on the right day. I can't think of a more important public conversation than the one that Professor Federer is leading tonight.
That's the conversation I'm particularly interested in. And if it's anything like what he spews in his classroom, actions may need to be taken. He's seen as an insurrectionist, you see.
That may be someone's opinion. However, Backstreet, in the great tradition of Virginia coffeehouses, is a safe place for free speech and the exchange of ideas, no matter how controversial.
You defend this man. Who will defend you when the time comes?
The people, Robert. The people.
Your actions can have consequences that go far beyond just you and your family. What about your patrons? I hope everything goes well here tonight.
What can I get you?
Mason Alexander's voice trails off as the increasing volume of voices and conversations register again. A tall young man comes through the front door. Darren Stevens enters the coffee house. Darren Stevens is a journalism major with an emphasis in television broadcasting. His passion is documentary production. Tonight he'll be filming the lecture. He sees his party, walks over and receives a hug from Frida McCoy and a big handshake from Eddie Stansfield. Once situated, he approaches the coffee bar, catching Mason Alexander's eye.
Mr. Alexander, is it okay for me to set up?
Darren Stevens gestures to his backpack with tripod hanging off of it.
Sure. Do you need any help?
The two of them walk over to the stage where tonight's lecturer will speak from and begin preparations, setting up camera and microphone. Erica Alexander serves Robert Campbell his coffee. Robert Campbell decides the best place for him is to warm a stool at the coffee bar. A tall, confident young woman, Karen Jennings, enters through the front door. Inside are Charlton's Coffee House. Circa 1775. Late afternoon. A woman similar in features to Karen Jennings enters through the front door of our Charlton's Coffee House. She appears to recognize a man sitting towards the back wall to the left, and she starts her walk in his direction. Backstreet Brews Coffee House. Late afternoon. Joshua Jennings's party is complete as Karen Jennings enters the coffee house and spots him. Joshua Jennings sees her, rises and greets her with a brotherly embrace. He points to her coffee and they sit.
Your coffee may be more like a cold brew now. Sorry.
My sweet brother, I know you meant well. This soiree is shaping up nicely. I have a few check-ins to make.
First stop, Karen Jennings takes her coffee cup with her and visits the student table. We see her quietly greet and be greeted with Eddie Stansfield and Frida McCoy, not necessarily hearing their conversation. Karen Jennings moves on to the coffee bar, making eye contact with Erica Alexander. Then, distracted by,
I know who you are. Do you know who I am?
I know who I am too. Who do you think you are?
Robert Campbell at your service. Consider me security for the event tonight.
That's funny. You don't look like a cop.
as Karen Jennings looks over to the table where Dennis and Morita Maldonado are seated.
My interests are in making sure that the free flow of speech and ideas doesn't become a front-page story.
Good luck with that.
Karen Jennings turns away from this passive-aggressive character of a man and calls to Erica Alexander.
Erica, can I get a warm-up?
Erica Alexander makes her way down the bar with coffee pot in hand. Inside are Charlton's Coffeehouse. Circa 1775. Late afternoon. The two women in dresses of the period continue to speak quietly to each other. Jane Charlton, our Charlton's wife rather than Erica Alexander, tells Karen Jennings.
The deputy territory magistrate is nobody to trifle with. He represents the king, the governor, and the taxman all together. You're best to watch your tongue with him.
Both women turn to look back over at Robert Campbell in period dress. He nods back towards the women.
Arrogant, yes, but nothing of consequence to me. I'm just a simple girl from Richmond with an occasional opinion, which nobody pays much attention.
Sister, you're playing with fire.
Backstreet Brews Coffeehouse. Evening, 7 p.m. The stage is set for the evening's event. A dozen or more patrons are seated around the coffeehouse. It's time. Mason Alexander tucks the new painting under his arm and approaches the stage. He sets the painting on an easel, turns to his customers, friends, and speaks.
Welcome, friends. Tonight is a special night. I thought I was going to sneak away tonight. And what a glorious night it is. Most every face I see here is a memory. It may not be a perfect memory, but tonight you're ours and we're yours. Backstreet Brews Coffeehouse has been here serving you for the past half-dozen years. My, don't they go by in a blink. It is my one candle wish that you would have a life as blessed as mine, where you could wake up one morning and say, I have everything I need, and want nothing more. There are times when I close my eyes and imagine myself back in 1775, where our Virginia coffeehouses all began. Back then, the strongest stimulant on menu was conversation. Such talk was the natural and obvious precursor to early modern revolutions. Social, political, scientific, and intellectual. They described our early coffeehouses as free places. Yes, free from debauchery and vice, but hotbeds of sedition. Coffeehouses had their critics. Churchmen who suspected coffeehouses were occasions of sin. Women weren't allowed inside coffeehouses. Thank goodness, we've learned from our mistakes. In Virginia, our Charlton's Coffeehouse was the site of improving lectures and amazing demonstrations. Archaeology has found a set of human vertebrae and a finger bone with copper wires and a pin attached, possibly from an exhibit or an articulated human skeleton used in lectures. And there were other activities at our Charlton's. Archaeologists found 17 crucibles with trace amounts of gold, silver, and copper on the site. Perhaps Richard Charlton rented space to an assayer. If you close your eyes, can you see it too? On that note, I'd like to present to you the newest addition to our gallery of timeless art. We call it Revolution's Eve.
The audience claps riotously. Into the coffeehouse walks a slim man, an intellectual, a beatnik, Tobias Federer, approximately 35 years of age. He stands unimposing behind everyone whose attention is focused on Mason Alexander, the coffee shopkeeper.
Myself and our painting are but the opening act. Our headliner is here in the house. I've known our guest lecturer for 25 plus years. We were roommates in the dorms of JMU. Much the same as you young people. We planned to change the world. And our caffeine-powered late-night debates would be the source of those ideas. We're all changing the world. One day at a time. One cup at a time. Because that's the way it works. My friends, in the tradition of our Charlton's and our Backstreet Brews Coffeehouse, it is my distinct pleasure and honor to present to you tonight's guest lecturer, George Mason Professor, Tobias Federer.
Tobias Federer steps toward the stage, receiving a handshake that morphs immediately into a bromantic embrace. Mason Alexander whispers into Tobias Federer's ear.
Their eager minds are yours now. Something incredible is going to happen.
Good evening. What did I miss? I'm here this evening to talk about the momentous Artemis 3 space flight mission. This week, 3 American astronauts visited the moon for the first time in this century, 5 decades after the last mission landed there. They are on their way home right now.
The room is stunned. While historic, they came to Backstreet Brews this evening to discuss and debate social issues, not the value of moonshots. Tobias Federer pauses and with a glint in his eye starts again.
Perhaps I'm here to talk about something a little different. There are many issues that mark our time, but perhaps none more profound than the violence we live with as a norm in our society. We all wish we knew the answer. However, none seems straightforward enough to be the obvious solution. America is stuck in a spiraling escalation of unchecked daily violence. Society seems unwilling to make the hardest and most counterintuitive decisions to disrupt the culture of violence. How far will mankind have to go to find the ultimate solution and propel itself to the next level? Our founding fathers saw to it that our right to free speech would be protected by the Constitution forever long. Tonight will be a conversation, an exchange of personal perspectives. Any thoughts?
Morita Maldonado raises her hand.
No hands. We want your words.
Morita Maldonado takes the hint and launches straight in.
Democrats have brought legislation to the floor of Congress time and time again to strengthen our gun laws. But the Republicans have stonewalled every time.
Without hesitation, Dennis Maldonado counterpoints.
Every chance the Democrats get, they are looking for opportunities to take away Americans' rights to own firearms. We're not going to let them trample on our constitutional rights. Guns don't kill people. People do.
Clearly this is getting worse, not better. With no end in sight. My prayer for this coming year is that it's his plan to bring change.
Good evening. Thank you again for giving your personal time and joining us this evening. Tonight's attendees are a beautiful, eclectic, and concerned crowd. Welcome family, friends, colleagues, creatives, and collaborators. I'm so grateful you're here this evening. Tonight we're listening to the story of people like ourselves who all see a problem that needs fixing. They gather in Virginia coffee houses, much the same as our founding fathers did in colonial times. They discuss, argue, and debate the most consequential issues of their day. Their objective: to conceive solutions, proposals for change. I hope you enjoyed the Coffee House Part 1. We're taking a 3-minute intermission so you can stretch your legs. Please feel free to join the chat and post any comments or questions you may have. Let me go ahead and put something on the chat right now. There we go. At the conclusion of Part 2, we'll take 5 to 10 minutes to answer your questions from the chat. Our next event is on July 25th, and it'll be a virtual Coffee House Zoom meeting where we can interact real time. So please sit back and relax. The big messages are still to come. You're watching the Coffee House.
That all men are by nature equally free and independent and have certain inherent rights, of which, when they enter into a state of society, they cannot, by any compact, deprive or divest their posterity. Namely, the enjoyment of life and liberty, with the means of acquiring and possessing property and pursuing and obtaining happiness and safety. Who recognizes these words?
That's the Constitution.
The Declaration of Independence, right?
Inside are Charlton's Coffee House. Circa 1775. Evening. A new scene from behind of a room full of people, and one man facing them waving a pistol in the air as he speaks.
The British Army isn't the only threat to Virginians' peace, safety, and prosperity. In the future, a federal army must be kept in check by state militias. State militias will be able to repel the danger of a federal army. It may well be doubted whether a militia thus circumstanced could ever be conquered by such a proportion of regular troops. The colonies are different. European kingdoms are afraid to trust the people with arms. Unlike them, we should embrace the existence of subordinate state governments as forms of barrier against the enterprises of ambition.
The patrons exclaim in rounding support.
Hear, 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 hear.
Mr. Madison, your point is well taken and considered. Have you heard? Mr. Adams, Mr. Jefferson and I have been writing the Virginia Declaration of Rights. Its second preservation reads as follows. That government is, or ought to be, instituted for the common benefit, protection, and security of the people, nation, or community, of all the various modes and forms of government, that is best which is capable of producing the greatest degree of happiness and safety, and is most effectually secured against the danger of maladministration. And that, when any government shall be found inadequate or contrary to these purposes, a majority of the community has an indubitable, inalienable, and indefeasible right to reform, alter, or abolish it in such manner as shall be judged most conducive to the public weal.
Inside the back street brews Coffeehouse. Evening.
You're both right. You see, Virginia was the birthplace of our nation. In 1775, the governor at the time, Francis Fauquier, signed into Virginia law the Declaration of Rights written by George Mason, which served as the model by which the Declaration of Independence was proposed in Philadelphia less than a year later. Coffeehouses like this one were ablaze with debate of social issues ranging from gaining freedom from unfair British taxation to freedom of religious liberty and the right to bear arms. The Virginia Declaration of Rights, which later served as the blueprint for the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution, argued that the power of the government is vested in, and consequently derived from, the people.
Unexpected at the moment it occurs. However, not unexpected in the coffeehouse. The speaker is interrupted by a patron. Her protest begins.
Camden, New Jersey. Austin, Texas. Hamilton, Ohio. Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Seattle, Washington. San Isidro, California. Brooklyn, New York. Edmond, Oklahoma. Killeen, Texas. Littleton, Colorado. Blacksburg, Virginia. Fort Hood, Texas. Binghamton, New York. Geneva County, Alabama. Newton, Connecticut. Aurora, Colorado. Washington Navy Yard. San Bernardino. Orlando. Las Vegas. Sutherland Springs. Parkland. Thousand Oaks. Pittsburgh. Santa Fe. Virginia Beach. Uvalde. Buffalo. The instances of violent crime goes on. And on. And on. How do declarations of rights have anything to do with the chaos and destructive violence we experience in our country today?
Have you noticed how everything becomes politicized? COVID, gender, guns, race, energy, economics, war, climate change, religion. You know what America has become. We're the democracy that isn't a democracy any longer.
We're the great experiment that's gone wrong. We've lost our way. Institutions and the Constitution itself stand in the way of freedom and peace. I've thought about this for some time now.
You know what the problem is. We're committed to the system, the American government process. It controls us. We're too heavily invested in it to think of any other way. We believe that two parties, candidates, and elections are the only way democracy works. As a consequence, democracy has been lost at the actual citizen level.
So, radical change is what we need.
Let me ask you this. What do you think would happen if by law, periodically the Constitution was put under review, then subject to change by popular vote?
Karen Jennings reacts as though she just connected a million dots at the same time. She nearly falls completely back.
I've never heard an idea like this until now. Or, if people have been thinking about it, nobody has publicly said. You know what would be the first thing that would go? The Second Amendment. The guns. I really think that if put to a vote, the American public would repeal it. Citizens are desperate for change. They're sick and tired of the partisan politics and the violent crime.
What do you think we ought to do about this, my friend?
I'm what you'd call an activist. I'm part of a movement by the name of In Our Lifetime.
Robert Campbell can be seen turning to Mason and Erica Alexander.
I know who they are. They're anarchists. Listen to what else she has to say.
Free speech means freedom to express yourself in a peaceful manner. I know who she is too. That's why she's here tonight.
We believe that it is the inalienable right of any and all Americans to live in a community free from violence. There are citizens who seek to form a new American community, committed to creating a peaceful and safe place to live, protecting all who choose to join its ranks.
The room quiets. Karen Jennings moves to the front stage.
We envision a day when this society is willing to take any and all measures to remove violence from its midst. One is willing to make the hardest and counterintuitive decisions to disrupt our culture of violence and replace it with a new order which propels our country to the next level of social, spiritual, and intellectual growth. This new America will be willing to reestablish itself in the smallest incremental extent necessary to plant and successfully thrive. Failure is not an option. Our new community will welcome all who are willing to commit to the ways of peace and accept the terms of sacrifice and deterrence deemed necessary to succeed. This new American community will establish itself in a place of new birth, with no intention of taking property or prosperity from any other American citizens. Both new and traditional America will live in harmony, side by side, committed to each other's interests. Together we stand, divided we fall.
Mason, you are curiously absent from this conversation. What say you? Have you an opinion on the woman's radical proposal?
What we're doing now about violent crime is nothing more than kicking the can down the road. The stakes are too high to just try anything and see if it works.
The survival of our society, our country, and our way of life is contingent upon taking all steps necessary to remove ourselves from the environment where instruments of violence, violent offenders, and the acceptance of violence is a norm.
Since we're speaking hypothetically, members of this new community would have to freely give up their rights to bear or possess firearms or lethal weapons.
Anyone, Americans, immigrants, all must be welcome to join such a cooperative movement. There would be no obligations, exclusions, only committed volunteers to this mission for survival. It should only thrive on the basis of attraction, not promotion.
This will never fly. You can't take away people's guns. It's their right to possess them, and they're too scared to let go of them.
We don't see this proposal as a calling to take guns away from citizens who wish to keep them. This is a movement of citizens who wish to establish and live in a weapon-free region of our country. That place may be small at first, but will grow with the success of peace it seeks. It will be a place of American rebirth.
We want this. Who will lead us on this sacred crusade?
Reversal of the culture of violence we live in could take generations. By the time something like this is accomplished, there will be no further need for the ultimate deterrence. Members of the In Our Lifetime movement believe there is only one ultimate deterrence to violence that will work. Many would advocate that capital punishment is the answer.
This would not be consistent with the intentions of our father, nor the founding fathers.
Our movement advocates permanent societal removal of violent offenders with no possibility for parole. Counterintuitive as it is, we believe this punishment, unwavering and swiftly administered, is the most effective method to end acts of violence. Until the problem is resolved, we must live by this standard.
Do you think that's a bit harsh?
An unlikely voice reveals its position.
I'm afraid it's the only way. Americans must seize the opportunity, before it's too late, to choose our destiny rather than have it chosen for us.
There are higher callings for everyone, and our greatest opportunity to fulfill them comes from a commitment to live in the image of God as we understand Him. This calling is more important to our society than going to the moon was. Domestic peace is our new frontier. As Americans, we must achieve it or die trying. Peace is our destiny.
Eric Alexander turns and speaks quietly to Mason Alexander.
With great power comes great responsibility.
I don't understand. What do you mean?
Something incredible is happening. You'll see.
Inside our Charlton's Coffeehouse, circa 1775, evening. The debates and heated discussions reach a crescendo.
Mr. Gold. Mr. Gold. What do you say?
What we see is a growing lack of mutual respect among fellow Virginians. We're witness to corruption, exploitation of the government, and social systems for personal gain. Citizens are behaving like criminals. Violent crime sailed from the Isles and has come into full bloom in the colonies. Measures must be taken to mediate these malignancies in our republic.
Back Street Brews Coffeehouse. Evening. Several phone alerts ring at the same time.
Mason, put on the TV. Something's happening. The president is about to address the nation.
I'm getting a call.
Robert Campbell picks up and listens. He gestures towards Mason Alexander, now turning on the TV. Everyone stops and quiets.
Good evening. Unexpectedly, all major news outlets have received notice from the White House that President Wilkes will address the nation at the top of the hour. It is believed that she plans to speak to the nation on the seemingly uncontrolled issue of violent crime. Today's most recent occurrence near Ashburn, Virginia, may be the tipping point that produces some form of bipartisan action. We go to the White House now.
Good evening. As Artemis III returns to Earth, we are conscious not of what we leave behind, but of what lies before us. The dreams that draw humanity forward seem always to be redeemed, if we believe in them strongly enough and pursue them with diligence and courage. Once we stood mystified by the stars, today we reach up to them. We do this not only because it is man's destiny to dream the impossible and to do the impossible, but also because in space as on Earth, there are new answers and new opportunities for the improvement of, and the enlargement of human existence. My fellow Americans, we set sail on this journey because there is new knowledge to be gained and new rights to be won, and they must be won and used for the progress of all people. Change we must or die we will. The moon mission of Artemis III may represent a turning point for the American adventure, our democratic experiment. Gun violence has reached a tipping point in our country. I believe that bold, radical measures need to be taken to turn this painful situation around. When the people speak, it is the obligation of its government to listen and respond. Tomorrow morning I am sending to the floor of Congress legislation I will provide for 3 new constitutional amendments, each of which will have profound and long-reaching impact. Amendment number 28 will read as follows. As a democratically governed society, citizens of the United States have the right to periodically review, modify, and remove elements of the United States Constitution and amendments. This obligation will be conducted every 8 years. Revisions to be publicly voted upon and decided by simple popular majority. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Amendment number 29 will read as follows. The right of citizens of the United States to organize and to live, if they choose, in weapon-free zones shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Amendment number 30 will read as follows. States have the right to apply measures of absolute and irrevocable imprisonment to violations of weapon-free zone laws, and shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any other state. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. America is still that shining city upon a hill. She is still a beacon and a magnet for all who desire freedom. Change must start here, in our towns, in our cities. The new America in our lifetime movement doesn't need another violent tragedy to start its work. Today, I'm asking all Americans, are you willing? Are you ready to make the most difficult and important decisions of your life? To sacrifice what it takes to build a violence-free new America? With freedom comes great responsibility, sometimes at a heavy price. Let us all unite behind this sacred cause. Our legacy is our strength. We will win. We have faith. Good night. May God bless our astronauts on their voyage home. God bless our soldiers stationed at home and abroad. And God bless the United States of America.
Mason Alexander lowers the TV volume.
I had a feeling something very big was about to happen. I wasn't sure it would be this.
Something incredible is happening. What's next?
I don't know what's next. I hope the legislation doesn't get hung up in the Senate. I understand what the president is trying to do. Each amendment will draw massive public and political debate.
The movement proposes that just one community either offers its neighborhood, or a new neighborhood is built where people can exercise their choice. And now, constitutional amendments are being proposed that will give everyone the right to live where firearms aren't allowed, and no acts of violence are tolerated.
So, this is an experiment. I wonder where the first settlers will be.
This can be an abject failure that gets no traction whatsoever, or a miraculous success. Either way, this is going to take time.
I hope I see peace in my lifetime.
I do too, sister.
Do we understand the implications of this on the legal process?
Yes. Yes, I do. We're gonna be putting away a lot of people forever. They're gonna freeze for eternity. These new laws of our land are intended to remove from our midst weapons of violence, violent offenders, and the social acceptance of violence as a norm.
A sobering thought. Isn't it, Mr. Federer?
10 years later, inside the backstreet Brews Coffeehouse, Day, Mason and Erica Alexander, Robert Campbell, Tobias Federer, Freda McCoy, Eddie Stansfield, Darren Stevens, Joshua Jennings, Matthew Lowry, Jerry Dunphy and Dennis Maldonado are seen talking, sitting and standing around tables in the coffee house. The TV plays.
Good afternoon and happy Independence Day to all our viewers in the United States and around the world. I'm Wolf Blitzer in our Washington, D.C. studios, and you're in the Situation Room. For the last 10 years, Americans have lived in the new age of promise and peace provided under the umbrella of the 28th, 29th, and 30th constitutional amendments. What many had feared would trigger civil war in the United States instead has taken hold like a miracle cure. The community of New Manassas, Virginia, was the first to embrace the law and develop a new social order. The grand new American experiment proved that a community can achieve a near 0% crime rate in a weapon-free, violence-free zone. Since then, 11 states and 22 more American cities have joined the crusade with common success. With us this afternoon is the woman many recognize as the maternal leader of the In Our Lifetime movement, Virginia Senator Karen Jennings. Senator, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on, Wolf.
Senator, what do you credit the success we've seen here in the United States to, related to solving the gun violence issues that plagued our country through the 2020s?
Wolf, I think the answer is pain. Our colonial heritage and struggles for freedom prove to us that pain is the cornerstone of change. Desperation had to give way to something. In our case, in this reality, we too chose to take risks, to act with bold thinking. We chose hope and action. We recognized that the problem wasn't someone else. The problem was us. When we chose to change, that's when change became possible. You know what I love about this grand experiment? Is that we are still as true to the spirit of the movement as when it was started. We are all Americans, both in traditional America and new America. As we suspected at first, together we are stronger than before the new constitutional amendments. Our peace and freedom are still fragile. However, I am hopeful that this tremendous process will continue to grow, and that one day, there will be no need for the ultimate deterrence. For then, we will be fully transformed. I'm hopeful to see that in my lifetime.
Amen to that. How will you celebrate today's holiday?
I plan to join my family in New Manassas later today.
Is there any truth to the rumor that you may run for higher public office?
Wolf, it's a long ways to 2040. By then, I may be back in New Manassas teaching my middle school classes. I think I'd like that equally as much.
Thank you, Senator, for joining us in the Situation Room today.
It's been a pleasure. Have a safe 4th of July.
We are receiving reports from The Hague that European leaders meeting there are about to make a stunning announcement. Reliable sources are telling CNN that leaders from the UK, France, Germany, Scandinavia, Italy, Spain, and Greece have prepared constitutional amendments for their countries that, once approved, will formalize their domestic commitments to the continued adoption of the In Our Lifetime global movement.
The sound goes down on the TV. Mason Alexander feels something. He turns to Erica Alexander. She's young again. Same as the day Tobias Federer came to lecture there 10 years ago.
I love you, Mason. Something incredible is going to happen.
Faded images of founding fathers can be seen sitting around along the walls and at empty seats.
So, that was a journey. The Coffeehouse is what screenwriters refer to as an adaptation. It's the short story version of the full feature film script called In Our Lifetime. Both stories propose the same message, dealing with the same issues, but dramatizing them differently. The screenplay In Our Lifetime tells the story of how a movement is born to solve the violent crime pandemic. We send men and women on a trip to the moon and back to tell this story. In their alternative reality, they have to reach for the stars to find Earth and a new way forward. We will make this movie one day. The Coffeehouse is the story of how concerned citizens like our founding fathers before us took to the streets to effect change. In this case, they used their coffee houses as platforms for free speech and the forum for developing new ideas to solve the problems of their day and today. We don't have to look to outer space to find the answers that dwell among us here on Earth. In our story, a handful of radical ideas are proposed for debate. 1. What if American society reached the tipping point and communities started to form that chose not to tolerate any form of violent crime in their midst? 2. What if American society chose a new experiment, one that allows for the periodic review and amendment of our Constitution, where changes are decided upon by popular vote? 3. What if American society chose to allow for the creation of violence-free zones, where citizens are free to move to, provided they are willing to live by the tenets of zero tolerance? 4. What if portions of American society chose to live by laws that provide the right to apply measures of absolute and irrevocable imprisonment for violations of violence-free zone laws? 5. What if America chose a new system of government that provisions for traditional America and new America, a country stronger together than divided? We intend to debate the issue of what citizens can do about violent crime in upcoming live Zoom webcasts, as well as actual Virginia coffee houses. The first live debate will be at Backstreet Brews in Lovettsville, Virginia on August 12th. We'll eventually make the Coffee House as a cinematic short film production on location in colonial Williamsburg, Virginia, and Lovettsville, Virginia. Our goal is to get people talking. We need to move from a position of playing the odds, as in violent crime will never happen to me, it only happens to the other guy. We already proposed that the solution isn't a partisan one. It's likely to be a new paradigm, one that keeps us all free, as our founding fathers envisioned 250 years ago. Before we go, let's look at the chat and see if there are any questions, anything that's been posted. Not seeing any questions. That's good. That's fine. That is all the time we have for tonight. I hope you'll come back in 2 weeks on July 25th and join the Zoom virtual coffee house. We'll provide dial-in information within the next few days. In the meantime, let's put our thinking caps on and prepare to share our personal perspectives at the virtual coffee house. On Saturday evening, 8 p.m. August 12th, as I mentioned, we're taking our cameras out to Backstreet Brews in Lovettsville, Virginia, where we'll conduct the first of many on-location coffeehouse webcasts. I want to extend a very special thank you to Maureen Donnelly, the real owner and chief barista at Backstreet Brews, for her partnership and support of our program. I'm pasting into the chat a few links. A link to the Coffeehouse video that you just saw, a link to our Coffeehouse webpage, and a link to the In Our Lifetime webpage as well. There you'll find links to the feature-length film screenplay and video bumper. Let's do that right now. There. And stick that in the chat. Hopefully that'll all go. Yeah, there we go. I'm looking forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks. Until then,
Vimeo
I'm J.R.
link,
Larson.
https://vimeo.com/dreamshotfilms/the coffeehouse web pages, https://www.dreamshotfilms.com/the-coffeehouse, https://www.jefumage.com/in-our-lifetime.
Oh, okay. Well, that was a short interruption. But I'm looking forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks. Until then, I'm J.R. Larson with Dreamshot Films. Good night from Fairfax, Virginia.